So as many of you know, Karen Kay and I once served the same church, both as associate ministers. Interesting thing about that church is it was the home congregation that Karen Kay grew up in. And so even though we were, gosh, it seems like a long time ago, it wasn't that far back, but I mean, we're well in our 30s at this point, and we're serving a church. We're working on our master's degrees at the time. I can't speak for myself, but as far as Karen Kay is concerned, a very capable minister, very capable. And because Karen Kay had grown up there, we would often encounter, as we'd come into board meetings or something, you would hear something, oh, the kids are here now. Like, they're talking about me and Karen Kay. And Karen Kay could be talking about something like very, very serious, something, sensitive, and people would, use that as a time to remind Karen Kay, I had changed your diapers when you were a child. And it wasn't impossible, and they were good people, but there was a lot of tension and complexities to this system. And when it was time for us to move on, Karen Kay went and she became an associate area minister, and I became for the first time a senior clergy person in another disciples church. And as we're packing up and as we're leaving, Karen Kay goes, and to think like they didn't even accept Jesus in his hometown. What made me think that I would be accepted? And to this day, that's a good question, and I have no idea. But the Spirit guides us in weird places, and oftentimes the Spirit will guide us in places we don't want to go, or that are uncomfortable, or that are complex. Oftentimes the Spirit guides and directs us in ways that we never intended or never even imagined. And it's hard when you're in a community to allow yourselves to be vulnerable and to be your authentic selves with all your beauty and wonder that you bring to the table. Each and every one of us has growing edges and personal work that each and every one of us have to do and need to do. And that's one of the beautiful things about community, is that it gives you a space to grow and to become whoever it is you were created to be in the image of God. But communities can also be particularly cutting when they're offering criticism, or when conflict arises. Nobody can hurt you like your family, like your community, like the people that are closest to you. Every Sunday, not every Sunday, but every good Sunday, we have choir sing, and today the guitar class is going to play. And I was reminiscing about over the years that I've been here. It seemed like when I first got here, it was easier to get up and sing and play. And I was wondering, like, why does it seem more difficult now? And it's because we are in community. And I love y'all, y'all love me, and there's something about, like, you don't want to let your family down. It's weirder when you sing in front of your family as opposed to when you get up and sing in front of a bunch of people you don't know. And I see all the vocalists going, like, this is so true. Like, when I was touring with musical theater acts, I wouldn't even think about it, especially once you start really hitting like 2 shows a day and you're just in the groove and you're playing a 6-week run of something. But if like my dad showed up, or like one of my close friends was there, like I would find myself like really paying attention, like, oh, don't drop a stick and don't do anything stupid, and be on because you don't want to let down your family. And I think that's what makes it so cutting, and what makes it so difficult when those relationships aren't healthy and when they're not life-giving. We had a really good discussion. We always have great discussion groups. If you're ever looking for something to do on a Thursday morning, 11 o'clock, the conversation and the coffee is always grooving in this place at that hour. It's always really good. But we are talking this week about the Jeremiah passage from the lectionary this week, which we're not preaching on today, but it's worth the read. It's a real good one. The topic we were talking about was like, how do we, it's not even you, it's like, how do we as a community, how do we discern what is of the Holy Spirit? How do we perceive and figure out, like, what is truth really? Who gets to make these calls? According to whom? These are deep questions, existential questions. And even though I don't have like a tried and true bullet point checklist of things, I do think that there are some commonalities when it comes to truth, when it comes to seeking out what is of the Spirit. And one of the first and foremost criteria I can think of is it life-giving? In the early cases of the Spirit, the Ruach, the breath of God, that was the first thing that gave life. The Ruach, the breath of God was breathed into Adam. And in that moment, he became alive. So what does the Spirit do when we think about it? First, it's creative, and it is creativity. And if there's one thing that's really going to get us out of like so many of the societal and systemic jams that we're in right now, it's going to have to be our love and our compassion, but it's going to rely heavily on our creativity, allowing the Great Spirit to help us think and create our ways out of some of these corners we have backed ourselves into. So how can you tell if something is of the Spirit? Does it lead to life? Is it beautiful in its spontaneous creativity? Does it lead to life? And finally, this is an incomplete list, but does it speak truth to power? Is it slightly edgy, the message it brings? Does it reinforce the person's position of authority when they speak it? Because that should be a red flag. Jesus is speaking the truth, and it got him in trouble. And it got him in trouble with the people he loved the most, his own community, that had to cut especially deep, knowing it was the people that he grew up around and that knew him. Society can be so cruel. Our communities can be so cruel when they are not healthy. I think what we do on any given Sunday morning is this. We come together. We want to seek God. We want to make the world that we live in better and reflect the love and the light that we have experienced in whatever our individual faith journey might look like. We want to live in community with one another because I think all of us can agree that's how we are created to be. In community. Living, learning, creating, collaborating together in good harmony with this earth and one another. We want to use all the creative and life-giving aspects of community, and we want to mitigate all the destructive properties of unhealthy community as well. We want to be open as a community of faith. Now, how can we better serve those that are marginalized in our midst? How can we continue to be a lean and mean little church, but also be sustainable and reach out to those who have been in unhealthy church systems, who want to be in church, but are terrified to go back? Over the last 5 or 6 years, we have seen Christianity as a whole deteriorate, and it's troubling to many of us. And I ask questions when I'm in class, and I'm talking to some of the heavy hitters in faith formation and church history. I ask them, where are all these people going that have left church? We've had our fair share of people who have decided to they just take their toys and go home. And I think it leaves us wondering, like, well, where are all these people going? Because it's not just our church. A lot of people over the social climate being what it is right now has started to permeate its way into our communities, so much so that it's a detriment. It's literally breaking up our faith communities in a lot of ways. And the question gets asked, well, where are they all going? They go home. They don't go back to church. You know what? And we're having something very interesting happen in our communities and in our country right now, where we have straight up secular Christians. Like people that, they're kind of Christian, but they're not really practicing, and that, they don't have a community, and they're not particularly in tune with the teachings of Jesus. They're secular Christians. It's something they do as an identity more so than a way of being. So how do we stand out aside from that? How do we better heal our own little community? And how do we facilitate healing in the greater community? Because if ever there's a society in desperate need of healing and reparations, it's us right here and right now. So how do we do these things? I don't know. I don't know. But I am hopeful. I'm really genuinely looking forward to our meeting next Sunday. Just brainstorming and hearing what our regional office has to say. I can share with you some of the things I've been learning in class. We can kind of we can look at our mission statement and better kind of reorient ourselves. These are good things. And yes, Christianity is taking a hit on the chin right now. But I have reason to believe that this is just, these are growing pains. Christianity needed to have a big basement dumpster fire sale a long time ago. There was a whole lot of crazy we needed to cut out, 20, 30, 40, 100 years ago. Church has been so slow to move in so many different fronts. It's time to rectify that. The one thing we do well in our community is that we are lean and mean. And when the mighty wind blows, we go ahead and bend as opposed to breaking. I think that's how the first century church was in a lot of ways. And the disciples, believe it or not, and I'm not going to bore you too much with fancy words, but we were a restoration movement church, which means we wanted to kind of restore what it was like to be a church in first century Jewish Palestine. We want to kind of get back to basics. Keep it simple. That's what we're called to be right now. As far as the nuts and bolts of fixing every little thing, I don't know. I do know y'all are very creative. And I do know that y'all's hearts are always in the right spot, of course. I do know that we are good at finding solutions when we work together. I know we genuinely like one another and want to work alongside of each other. So my prayers is this, that we create the kind of community that nurtures and protects its own. We create the kind of community that is aware of how destructive some communities have been to people. We create the kind of community where we can self-assess, where we can take stock in who we are, and when it's time to change, be able to change. I hope each and every one of you feel that you are a prophet in your own hometown. And I hope we have created the kind of hometown environment where prophets are listened to and encouraged and nurtured and nourished. So may we go out from this place. May each and every one of us be a prophet in our hometown, and may we greet one another as beloved prophets here in our own hometown. And all of God's children said, Amen. Amen.